Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Norwich Talk 4, the first video in quite some time. A video that I find kind of bizarre that I'm sort of even deciding to make, really, in the sense of sort of you look at the content across this channel so far this season, it's been pretty positive. It's been mostly us talking about Norwich City winning games of football. However, this video is entitled "The Problem with Norwich City," which, sure, I hope it doesn't annoy anyone, but it kind of is what we're going to be talking about. I know it's a little bit dramatic, but also at the same time, by the end of this video, I think I will have concluded that it's not that dramatic. I hope you're doing well. The weather has obviously changed for the worse since we last made a video, but that said, we will maintain the theme of depression, if you will, as we talk about Norwich City and all that is kind of going on at the moment and why there is a lot of sort of unrest, disinterest, really, from fans at the moment. The first thing I want to say is, and now I know it maybe might not mean anything to anyone, but the reason I haven't been making videos is just because of this long problem at Norwich at the moment, which is just I personally don't have any real connection to Norwich City at the moment. Don't have much of an interest, to be honest with you. After the Luton defeat, it was the first time where I'd been at a game, and I thought, kind of wish that I wasn't there at the game. That is, but it's a really weird thing, and I'm not going to make videos if I don't sort of want to, if you know what I mean. I don't, I'm not talking City. I don't have a civic duty yet to perform in terms of creating content, but that's kind of why. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, I've got a really long list in front of me. This video could be really long. It could be really short. I don't know. I just want to make this video. Um, and, maybe we can look back on it in a year's time and laugh or be like, wow, how right was he? No. But it's just such a weird, and I'm going to use my hands quite a lot. It's such a weird time to support Norwich at the moment. As I said, this big list, let's just dive straight into it. My first point is it feels like the Wevolution, it feels like the project is over. And that's really sad. It's a really sad thing for Norwich City. When the project started, Weber came in, and for that kind of half season, that 4, 5, maybe 6 months before Farke's first season, was clearing everything out, getting everything ready for this new project. Daniel Farke came in, changed the way we played football, gave Norwich City fans a whole host of wonderful memories, created a wonderful connection, as I said, a wonderful brand of football, all of that. And then last season, everything just sort of stalled, declined, all those kind of words. And clearly, the project we put so much faith into, so much time into, wasn't working. That happens. That's fine. It's just now we find ourselves in a position where it doesn't feel like there's a new project. It doesn't feel like the old project is being improved upon. It just feels like a whole lot of nothingness is happening at our expense. And in a season where season ticket prices have gone up, that kind of hurts, to be honest with you. Let's talk about Daniel Farke real quick. He lost his way. And the only point I want to make is I love him. My favourite Norwich City manager of all time. Can't see that changing for a long, long time. But he lost his way. It was the right time to sack him. So this isn't going to be a pining for Daniel Farke video, which I'm sure you're all probably very relieved at. My next point, Dean Smith hasn't improved anything. It's kind of like a bold claim, really, for a guy who's been in this job for nearly a year now to say he hasn't improved anything at all. But I kind of look at Norwich City now and I just think, well, what's improved under Dean Smith? The recent example, obviously, Daniel Farke was, the dead opposite, in the sense of there were very few things he hadn't improved in his time at Norwich. So to go from that to a stark contrast of Dean Smith and this year under Dean Smith, it's quite weird. I do want to say I like Dean Smith as a person. I think I've not met him, but from what I see, he seems like an all right guy. But that's kind of where it stops for me. I think his track record as a manager is impressive, and it was why I was excited. But as I said, we've been under his management for nearly a year now, and it doesn't feel like things have improved, or it doesn't look like things are going to improve in the long term. It doesn't look like he's a big part of this edited new whatever project. I think with Dean Smith at the moment, and this is my next point, is there doesn't seem to be a style of football. There's no connection with fans, and I think my general point and feeling towards Dean Smith, which probably led towards me having a very undignified rant on Twitter, was that it seems like Norwich City is his Aston Villa rebound. Aston Villa was his, as he said, boyhood club. Loved managing them. Imagine managing the team you support. Wow, dreamland. He got sacked, and to me, it just seems like Norwich is a rebound. And I think that any club you could argue that he would have gone to after would have been viewed as a rebound. But I see Norwich as a really good rebound in the sense of they're a club that always seem to get promoted regardless of who's in charge. Not taking the achievement away from any managers, but for him to bounce back from the heartbreak of Villa, oh, let's go and get Norwich promoted. It's not that hard. Now I know he took over when we were in the Premier League, but I am of the genuine belief that in his head he was like, yeah, we'll just get promoted next season. Because at that point in the season, how could you not? But yeah, as I said, no style. The beginning of the season, it kind of seemed like high press was the style, and again, I don't have the stats to back me up, but it feels like that's just died completely. It's like not just over the past 2 or 3 games, but over the past 5, 6, 7 games, it seems like the press just is either incredibly inconsistent or just not there anymore. And there were these sort of spells of really nice football where if we'd have played it under Daniel Farker, people would have been ranting. But again, those spells have just slowly faded away, which is why I'm kind of, well, definitely leaning towards just Dean Smith out. But yeah, they're kind of my points on Dean Smith. We'll obviously get back into him. But another thing as well as a set piece coach, I think that's a sign of how bad, or not bad, but how like desperate things are at Norwich at the moment, is that we seem to cling to the idea of a set piece coach, and all it seemed to have has done is highlight how poor Norwich are from set pieces. Anytime anything goes wrong from a set piece, oh, let's blame the set piece coach. And I've been guilty of that. You look at Kenny McLean's red card where he's punched someone from a set piece, and you just think, oh man, I thought we were going to be good at set pieces, which oh, you see what I mean by like how raw this video is going to be. In terms of improving things, Josh Sargent has improved when he's played up front, but as an example of where I think Dean Smith is kind of creating himself his own problems, is he hasn't quite figured out a system where he can get the best out of Timu Pukki and Josh Sargent. Sargent needs to be. I know there was kind of like a dabbling with the two up front, but Sargent seems to be back out on the wing, which not going to work, is it? We don't need to talk much more about that. Hoofball to Pukki as well. That was something that was big last season. Norwich just playing long balls under Daniel Farker, but it seems to still happen this season where a big ball will just get played, and it just kind of seems like there's a lack of risk these days, which I guess based off comments recently from Stuart Weber in terms of, oh, we need to change the way we approach the Premier League. I guess less risky football, more pragmatic football is realistic, but maybe it's just entitlement. But it seems like there's a lack of risk, which for me indicates maybe a lack of willing to go that extra mile to be the best. Which for me, risking possession during football is kind of worth it, and shows that to me. Whereas at the moment, it just seems to be a bit of hoofball, a bit of nothing, a bit of Marcelino Nunez just playing long balls to absolutely no one. Another point as well is that we've kind of highlighted sort of silly individual errors as the reason that Norwich have conceded a lot of goals. And I just think it's kind of gotten to a point now where it happens so often that I have to ask the question, is it a coincidence anymore? Or is it just poor coaching? I think there's been a good 2 or 3, maybe even 4 goals where Big Andy and Max Aarons have kind of let a man get between them, and a cross has been sort of scored from, whether it's a header, whether it's a bounce, and then a finish. At that point, you've got to ask the question, right, the head coach, whose job it is to improve his players, to tell them what to do, why is that not changing? That's been a big thing for me. Maybe it's picking the wrong players. Maybe it's just not having the quality. I don't know, but I'm past the point of thinking it's a coincidence and that it's an easy fix to just fix the simple errors, because it doesn't seem to be something that we're able to do, which is odd. Another kind of point that I kind of want to round myself back to is the lack of urge to make videos. I don't know if any other sort of Norwich City content creators, writers, anything like that have the same sort of thing, but this is the first time for me ever where I've just not really had much of an interest in talking about Norwich religiously like I have done in the past. At the moment, I'm happy to talk about it now, just kind of get it all out there and see what everyone else thinks. But in general, my life has always been, oh, yeah, let's talk about football 24/7, 24/7, 24/7. Whereas now it's like, oh, it seems like a bit of a chore. Going to Carrow Road seems like a chore at the moment. That's not good. That's not good at all. We'll get on to sort of the counter arguments as well at some point, because it is always worth sort of balancing the scales as best you can. Let's move on to Stuart Weber then, the man behind this whole project. We can talk about Daniel Farke, we can talk about D Smith all we like, but Stuart Weber is the alleged mastermind behind this. It seems like he's disinterested. You had the whole climbing mountains debacle, arguing with fans outside Carrow Road, the Chelsea link. I think he's probably done here. From my perspective as a fan of the football club, it seems like he's disinterested. It seems like he's kind of got what he wants from it, which is an impressive 2 seasons in the Championship, a better training ground, soccer bot, all that kind of stuff. He's improved the football club. Let's not get it wrong. And yeah, do you know what? It probably would be a bit of a blow to lose him, but I'm at a point now where I can't view him the way I used to, in the sense of just putting him on a pedestal, whereas all this stuff has happened, and it's like I don't think we can go back from that. And he is the last person, from what we've seen, who will ever apologize for anything, or look to sort of reprimand, is that right? Reprimand the relationship with the fans. He is the last person who you can imagine would want to do that. I think the Chelsea link's a big thing as well. There was reports at a time where it was a certainty. It sort of came out of nowhere, and then it was like, oh, he's off. And I just kind of think, if he'd have gone to Chelsea, that would have made him the biggest hypocrite in existence, because the whole message he's always preached has always been about building clubs. It's always been about doing sort of the dirty work and building something from the bottom up and staying away from the spotlight, all this kind of stuff. You go to Chelsea, it's the dead opposite. You're not going to get patience. You're going to be you're always going to be in the spotlight. I think the responsibility would have been lesser, in the sense of not as powerful for him. So it just kind of seemed like a big hypocritical thing, but it's not happened. So I'll put my hands up and move on. But yeah, it kind of seems like there's a lack of integrity at the club as well. I know there's been kind of a good approach to media, in-house club media, that is, in the sense of they put out these interviews with Neil Adams, and they're now doing one with the finance director, and that might be out by the time this video is out. But it just seems like there's a real lack of integrity at the club. It kind of seemed under Daniel Farke like everyone was held accountable for doing their individual jobs, whereas at the moment it's kind of like Stuart Weber's off here doing his own thing, Dean Smith's down here trying to get over Aston Villa. The players on the pitch don't have a clue what they're doing, and then you've got the board of directors up here who are trying to polish off their titles as best they can. So yeah, it kind of seems quite disjointed at the moment. And like, you've got tweets from Connor saying, where these major reports are announced, so Norwich City will be in a very difficult position if they don't get promoted and don't get sort of finance for being promoted. Connor's tweeted, oh, well, we, the local media, have requested to speak to the club, and it's either not met or declined. And I think it kind of stinks of the Moxie era. Not by any means am I saying we're back there, but it was a very brief era as well. But it just it feels like there's no more accountability being held for actions, because things aren't as green as what they used to be. But yeah, it does feel like the whole club, not just the pitch and the players and the management, but it feels like the whole club is kind of going through a bit of a hangover, because I don't think anything's been the same since we sacked Daniel Farke, and mainly because of the manner of how we did it after a win. And there's the whole, oh well, we did it on a high, but I don't know. That's not one for me. I think in terms of the counter arguments for this, before we get into them, the one thing I want to say is I just kind of want to put a peace treaty out there. There seems to be a lot of hostility around football Twitter, especially NCFC Twitter. And I say that because it's the one I look at the most. But we need to stop sort of taking the moral high ground over each other for different opinions. It's not great, is it? In the sense of, Like, for example, all the things I've just moaned about, someone will come back and say, "Oh, but we're third in the league, or fifth, or sixth, or whatever we are in the league, and we're trying to get promoted. We're not in a bad position. Look at the results." Um, Dean Smith made a very good point in his press conference of how, in a matter of like 1 or 2 games, it goes from Norwich City undefeated in 10 to they've won 1 in 5. It's crazy how that narrative can just twist. But I just don't like the belittling that goes on. I know it's not going to stop, but it just seems kind of like unnecessary to me. The last point that I'm going to make of complaining is, again, the problems with the money if we don't get promoted. I think the one thing with this project is we've always seen every decision made based around how can we keep this club financially stable? How can we keep everything in the best shape it can be? To then see a random report on a Monday, Tuesday morning saying Norwich City are in major trouble if they, well, not major trouble, but they're in trouble if they don't get promoted because of the spendings. Or was it like £50 million on loan fees and that kind of thing? It just kind of, it's a bit like, oh, the one time we actually did spend, we buggered it up essentially, big time. And there's always been all this talk of, oh, well, we're only going to spend if it's sensible. We've got aspects of the club that we need to finance, we need to sort of stabilize and keep on the ground. The minute we actually spend a little bit of money, it goes horribly wrong. Um, and it kind of almost seems a bit like a, oh, I told you, which is not a nice feeling at all. But that is probably it for my problems with Norwich. Where I sit at the moment is I'm kind of done with Dean Smith. Not in an angry way, in just a sense of I want a new project. And dare I say it, I think someone like Russell Martin would be a great appointment. And I'm scared to say it. I'm scared to think it, to be honest. But I would so happily sit through another Farker first season for 1 or 2 more seasons as someone comes in. Russell Martin is the dream example, and changes the way we play football, changes the squad completely, in the sense of players to suit their system, a connection with the fans. Even if there are no wins to Ole with the fans after, to know we have that, to know we have a manager in who clearly cares about the football club and the fans, that would just be my ideal scenario. And Russell Martin is doing fairly well, it seems. You know, he's clearly established a style of football. He would have a connection with the fans, but equally, Norwich is saying they need to get, well, it's being said that Norwich need to get promoted to avoid sort of financial problems. So maybe taking on Russ Martin wouldn't be such a great idea. But there you go. That's kind of my thoughts. In terms of the positives, you've got loyal fans. My point here is we've seen it all before, and we come back every week. We do. It's what happens. It's football. We know that there are good times. We know that there are bad times. We know that there are times where we're not going to want to be there. But like the suckers we are, we go every week. We pay our money and we support the team. And at this point, I'm not. You know, I'm not. I used to complain and whinge when people would boo, but at this point, I'm a bit like, right, you know, you've paid your money, you can do what you want. Ownership's another thing. Mark Atanasio, I think that's how you say his name. That whole thing is pretty positive. But you know, the idea of an outside investor coming in and maybe pumping some money in, it's kind of a bit like, well, what are they actually putting their money in? If this was 3 years ago with Mr. American money coming in, we would have been like, oh my God, this is it. Now we know it's not going to be like a spending 50, 60 million pounds on players, but the idea of an outside investor coming in and being interested by Norwich whilst someone like Daniel Farker was in the prime of his Norwich City career, it's like, oh my God, there's an investor coming into a project. Whereas at the moment, it kind of seems like an investor has seen a project and has come into the club at a time where the project either isn't there or isn't the priority. So yeah, I've done incredibly well there to make that positive negative. But they're my thoughts. I would really love to know yours in the comments down below. I was kind of a bit hesitant about making this sort of where I just sit down and talk because I don't know, there are times where it feels like it's gone a bit slow. But yeah, they're my thoughts on Norwich City. In terms of the content ahead, probably not gonna get back into what I was in, which was the previews, reviews, streams, previous like until things get interesting again or whatever. I think it's just going to have to be a slow burn because I don't know. It's just not fun for anyone at the moment. But I look forward to the caveats of look, when Norwich are on the table, they've won games, whatever. But my thoughts, there they are. Would love to know yours. Thumbs up if you want to. If you don't want to, more than understandable. If you want to subscribe to, again, that would be greatly appreciated. Fingers crossed Norwich City absolutely batter Sheffield United this weekend. And we can make a video and say, look how crazy you were being. But I sadly don't see that one happening anytime soon. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next one.